This week on the Powell Not Found podcast, the Yankees pivot with Max Fried, Devin Williams, and Cody Bellinger is new to the team. And we round out with some news from the Chicago Cubs and a reconciliation with Sammy Sosa, of all people, coming out of the woodworks here on the last podcast of 2024 on the Powell Not Found podcast. Let's hit it.
I'm gonna tell you a story about a girl who loves gin. A national pandemic seized her birthday celebration. Although she knew it was coming, we tried not to tell her. She brewed some Irish breakfast. She knew her birthday was getting coronaed.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the last episode of 2024 of the Powell Not Found podcast with your host, Mark Powell, here for the week of December 19th, 2024. I hope everybody is getting their Christmas presents ready to go. I hope all the people who haven't started shopping yet, at least I hope you're glancing the gift card aisle, because that is where you're headed. If you have not gotten anything shipped or delivered as of right now, that is the position you're going to be in come December 24th. That is always a fun day to be at the mall, because you see a lot of panic, a lot of worried faces, a lot of sweating brows, a lot of people going, oh crap, time really got away from me. So hopefully everything is getting, coming into place for your holiday. Hopefully everything is great for whichever holiday you celebrate. So welcome to the last show of 2024. Certainly an accomplishment for myself, if I do want to give myself a pat on the back. But before we even get to that kind of stuff, we do have a lot to talk about this week. And, of course, what else? We're going to talk about the New York Yankees. The Yankees losing Juan Soto could have been an absolute disaster for this team. They could have lost out to the Mets. They could have put out a team that looks similar to 2023, but without key pieces like Glaber, without Rizzo. And they would have had an anemic offense and a rotation that looked very, very similar to rotations of years past, and just run it back out there. They didn't. They realized they lost out in the deal. Soto was going to go to the person with the most money at the end of the day. And Brian Cashman, for all of the negative criticism that he received, he went out there and he got a couple star players, including Max Fried from the Atlanta Braves, signing him to an 8-year deal, $1 bajillion, however much money it is. The most money to a left-handed starter historically. He went out to the Milwaukee Brewers and signed Devin Williams to be his closer. Traded for Devin Williams and Nestor Cortez off the team, which is a little bit of a sting considering how much of a bolster that Nestor gave to this team, and how much of an effort Nestor gave to a lot of those teams that obviously came short of the ultimate goal, but Nestor was so much of a part of it, right? He also gave personality to a team that's otherwise missing a lot of personality. So, Nasty Nestor, crazy left-handed windups. Milwaukee's going to love him for the year that they have him. He is fun to watch. He's one of the rare starting pitchers outside of maybe a Garrett Cole, outside of a Shohei Ohtani, outside of a, Chris Sale, that you would go and purposely watch because you're waiting for one of those wacky movements of Nestor. So that's going to be sorely missed on this team, right? It's kind of fun seeing all the fans with like the crazy mustache kind of going on. So in the stands, but Devin Williams comes over for Nestor Cortez, right? They also trade over Caleb Durbin, who was the much talked about, hyped second baseman in the minors that was looking for a hot second that the Yankees were going to go with, right? Glaber is a free agent right now. They had an opening at second base. It looks like they're very committed to not moving Jazz to second base, regardless of what everybody keeps saying. I think Jazz seems to enjoy third base. I think they enjoy him at third base. He does have a cannon for an arm. He might not be the most historically greatest defensive metric third baseman, but he definitely fields the position well for somebody who's never played it. And I think they're going to keep him there. And so it made kind of sense that if this kid was raking in the minor leagues, that maybe they would give him a shot. But he was traded. He was along in the package for Devin Williams. Devin Williams, a closer for the Milwaukee Brewers, and fortifies this bullpen of the Yankees, which is looking like it's a Jonathan Loizaga, Ian Hamilton, Scott Effross, Luke Weaver. Puts him in a kind of an awkward spot because I would assume after the performance and after the blooming of Luke Weaver last year that he was the closer. But when you bring in someone like Devin Williams, could you put him in a setup role, right? Would you be okay with seeing like a closer by committee situation that they had for basically the middle to the end of last year? Devin Williams obviously got stung in the playoffs by Pete Alonso last year, but historically he's got great numbers. So if you have him in the back of the bullpen, I would imagine that he is the closer until something drastic happens. I mean, it took Clay Holmes 14 saves to blow before they finally moved Luke Weaver into that role. And honestly, I think Luke Weaver took the organization by surprise. I don't even think the organization thought Luke Weaver was that dominant at the end of games. We saw him kind of run out of gas in the playoffs, but again, that was he had 3 months of experience. So good to fortify that bullpen. One of the big things, though, coming off of this loss of Juan Soto was, okay, it's nice to see the Yankees fortify their starting rotation. It's nice to see them fortify the bullpen, right? Those have been the Yankees' strengths, especially the bullpen, since Matt Blake's arrival and for the last couple years. The biggest problem was the offense, and they addressed it with the trade of Cody Bellinger. They send over Cody Petit. In the trade, Cody Petit had a couple spot starts here and there. I feel like he was one of the many, many players the Yankees would constantly option up and down, up and down, up and down when they needed him or when they needed to give somebody rest. So hopefully he can kind of flourish in Chicago in Wrigley Field, and hopefully they use him. And, maybe he gets a little bit more regular use over in Chicago. And over comes Cody Bellinger, who you might know as the son of Clay Bellinger, who also played for the Yankees. But more recently, Cody Bellinger, who played for the Dodgers, and the last couple of years, the Boris client that had the very, very interesting contract of $30 million a year for 3 years, but with an opt-out each season. It was definitely during that season when free agency was, let me turn on the brightness here a little bit. When free agency was a little bit more, the mega deals were not coming as easily when he signed here in 2023. I think everybody's focus was on, was it Ohtani, Judge? Now I'm getting confused. But he signed a deal, a 3-year deal with the Chicago Cubs for about $30 million. And frankly, I was kind of surprised, right, at the details of the trade. And then when you start seeing that the Cubs are sending over some cash, $5 million in cash, to kind of fray some salary, the Yankees are picking up his gigantic salary. And people, I think, knew that Cody Bellinger was on the trading block. It seemed like people were talking about Cody Bellinger was going to be a move that was an option for the Cubs. It seems like the Cubs wanted to get rid of that salary, maybe rid of that contract. And, when you're trying to dump someone's salary, there's only a few teams that really make sense at this point. These are the teams that we've been talking about all offseason. The Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, the Giants, right? So I imagine that the 5 or 6 teams, the Red Sox, the Phillies, the 5 or 6 teams that really can take on that big salary were probably the ones that were called, right? Were probably the ones that were in really contention to land Cody Bellinger. For the Yankees, this is a benefit. They didn't have to give up that much. They didn't have to give up Heel, as people were reporting. If they went for Kyle Tucker, they probably would have had to give up Heel in order to kind of break even on that trade. Cody Bellinger brings them a left-handed bat. They lost a left-handed bat not only in Soto, but they lost one in Rizzo. That kind of split up the lineup a little bit. They don't replace the numbers. Obviously, this isn't a one-to-one swap. No one's a one-to-one swap with Juan Soto, unless there's somebody else getting a $765 million contract that I'm not aware of. But it does help the Yankees kind of beef up a lineup that, let's remember, outside of Judge, is banking on a lot of performances, or is banking on a lot of career performances for people who don't necessarily have that track record. And what I mean by that is you have Judge in the middle of the lineup, who's a constant. Stanton is a constant, especially after that playoff performance that he had last year. I mean, playoff Giancarlo is a different kind of player, but you're banking on a lot of career performances from players that have not been tested, right? Volpe's going into his junior year. There's not really enough of a record going there. Jazz is finally having a full year with the Yankees as opposed to being traded from the Marlins, right? We don't know what we're going to get. We don't know what full year Jazz on the Yankees looks like. Half a year Jazz when he first came over and hit 7 home runs and 3 home runs in 2 games. I was like, this is going to be a match made in heaven. But he did slow down. He did struggle in the playoffs a lot. So your offensive production, I'm not confident that there's going to be a lot of offensive production from him as much as we might think that there's going to be. Rizzo was hurt a lot last year. There's nobody at first base right now. Clay Bellinger kind of softens the blow here in case they are not able to land a first baseman in free agency or sign somebody else. And Ben Rice, although seems like he's shaping up to be a great hitter, Susan Wallman said it over and over and over and over again on the radio broadcast last year. Can't hit the curveball. And after that 7-8 game honeymoon period in the middle of the season, you started seeing pitchers adjust, make the adjustment, and start throwing the curveball, and it was just swing and a miss, swing and a miss. Also, Ben Rice is rookie, right? You can't really bank your offensive future on somebody who's just coming up to the major leagues. That would be a massive, massive, massive gamble. Cody Bellinger. I'm sure everyone's making this mistake. Cody Bellinger also defensively gives you a little bit more flexibility, right? He's like an Oswaldo Cabrera in a lot of ways. He can play the outfield. He can play first base, right? He can go anywhere that he wants, that Boone wants to play him. And he has made himself actually, he made that known to Aaron Boone. And so let me play that clip here. They just introduced him today, and this is what he had to say about being a little bit flexible in this depth chart that honestly needs the flexibility right now.
He called me and we were just chatting. And I just wanted to let him know, how I'm feeling. And, I told him that wherever y'all need me to play, I'll play, whether it's left, center, or, if Judge gets a DH day, I'll play right. Or if you need me at first base, I'll play first. And, I enjoy doing that stuff. I think that, it helps the team that I'm on win. And, I enjoy doing that. I learned a lot from Kike Hernandez. He's probably one of the best players that I've seen at being able to roam around the field and just be above average or excellent in all the positions he plays. And so I got to see how it's possible, and I knew that I had the ability to do it. And so, I just like to work at it and, get my footwork down and just kind of get prepared that way. But, yeah, wherever they need me, I'm available. And, I like doing it and it excites me.
And that video is courtesy of SNY's YouTube page. Cody Bellinger excited to join the Yankees. He's going to need to be flexible, and Boone's going to need flexible players, right? If they do not sign a Christian Walker, as reported by multiple different outlets, they're going to need him to play first base, right? Oswaldo Cabrera has seen reps at first base. Ben Rice took over while Rizzo was hurt last year, but again, untested for a full season and a rookie at that. The benefit also of getting Clay Bellinger is sliding Judge over to right? Last year, all the talk on the media was about, can Judge survive a year in center? He injured his toe on Dodger Stadium the year before, missed a chunk of the season, and will he sustain? Will that big body sustain? Right, that was the huge takeaway from that. Well, he did, right? He for a 31-year-old, 32-year-old guy gallivanting in the outfield, he did pretty well in center field. I thought, watching him every single day, defensive metrics aside, I couldn't see something that I wasn't comfortable seeing him in center field. I'm surprised that they might slide him over to right. I would assume that with being the captain, that he might have the deference to say, no, I'm going to play center field, right? And put Cody in right field, right? Or put him in left field where there's more room to play in Yankee Stadium, and maybe shift Dominguez over to right? But they give him that flexibility, right? If they don't want him to play the outfield, they can have him play on first base, and he seems pretty solid defensively there, just in case they don't sign anybody else. So this is a good signing. Offensively, his numbers do stack up. It just depends on which Cody Bellinger shows up. I mean, he was mired by injuries in 2021, and so his numbers look a little bit softer than normal. Let me get those up. But last year, he slashed 266, on base percentage of 325, and and a slugging percentage of 426. So he had an OPS of 751. The year before with the Cubs, he had an OPS of 881, where he slashed 307, 356, and 525. It seems like if he's healthy and he's on a roll, he can be one of the better hitters in this lineup, right? I see him probably batting top of the lineup, right? If you have Judge 2, he's probably hitting 3, and then Stanton 4. The way that they've have this stuff kind of lined up, right? I don't think that this is it. I don't think that this should be the finish line for the Yankees trade deadline. It was a nice Christmas present to all Yankees fans, especially feeling like we still haven't addressed the elephant in the room, which was the offense. But they still need another player of this caliber to shake up the lineup the way that they did the rotation, right? In years past, right, we've added from just having Cole at the top of that rotation, we've added key pieces like Rodon, now Fried. We need to complement Judge, not just in one big way like we did last year with Soto, like they did last year with Soto, but we need to get more flexibility, more on base percentage here to complement Judge and Stanton in this lineup. And hopefully they both stay healthy, and hopefully it kind of jumpstarts this lineup. I know this is probably not a possibility, but still Gleyber remains unsigned. Do you offer Gleyber maybe a 1-year deal, right? To get him a little bit more market value for his kind of slower season that he had on his free agency season, right? Give him a better positioning in the market by offering him a 1-year deal, kind of similarly to what they did with Jonathan Loaizaga in the back of the bullpen, right? He got hurt. He couldn't really show off his free agent season. Signed him to a 1-year deal with a club option. Hey, try it again, right? Gleyber had a tough year last year until they put him in the leadoff spot, and then he started taking off. Why not sign him to a 1-year deal? Say, hey, the market's kind of slow. Maybe it will heat up next year when there isn't like this big fish in the market, and maybe you can kind of get your bag then, right? I don't know if that's an option. I don't know if that's what they're looking for. I think they're probably looking for a longer and a bigger and a fatter deal. I mean, Glaber's good, but right now, I would be okay with the lineup kind of staying as is if we had another Glaber-like person that we could depend on in this lineup. So great trade for the Yankees. Hopefully, good things to come for Cody Petit, who was on the Yankees again in spot starts. But it definitely complements the lineup, and it's definitely the right direction forward from where they were just 2 weeks ago, right? So definitely a good move, and all credit to Brian Cashman for that. So with that, let's take a little bit of a break, and we'll be right back with a strange story from the Chicago Cubs that came out earlier today. That I think we just have to talk about because it's funny and it's the end of the year. So let's take a quick break and we will be right back. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Powell Not Found podcast, available on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. If you haven't subscribed to the show, go ahead and subscribe. You can find us at youtube.com @PowellNotFound, and on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and review and rate the show. That's how people find us on all the podcast apps. And the more activity you do, the better that we do, and the more that we can grow and do all that kind of stuff. So before we start kind of wrapping up for the year, which is an interesting thing to say just in general, a story came out today that I feel like we have to talk about because it's just strange. Growing up, when I grew up watching baseball, I had a lot of interest when I was younger. I still have a lot of interest today, but baseball was always number one. And having played baseball for a long time, you look to your idols, and I grew up with 1990s baseball, which was full of idols like Derek Jeter and Nomar Garcia-Parra and all these kind of people that seemed larger than life, right? And then you had, unfortunately, what I ended up watching in a lot of players like Mark McGwire and a lot of players like Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds, I ended up seeing an era, Alex Rodriguez, an era of steroid-laced baseball, which, as an adult, watching some of baseball now, which is I should say before they banned it, was so shift-heavy and offense was at a low, frankly, I missed, right? There was something magical about watching someone sock like 1,000 home runs in a season, and seeing Barry Bonds hit a ball that looked like it entered orbit was something just crazy to witness, right? And then seeing baseballs fall out, and from investigation after investigation, seeing baseball players testify like in front of Congress, it was just a messy period. And it's a period that baseball doesn't necessarily look back on fondly. And that's why, and years have passed, and there's always been debate, and there's been every single time the Hall of Fame voting comes up, there's always the same debate that comes up in January or February, whenever they induct. We'll probably end up talking about how certain players were snubbed because of the steroid era. It's an era that baseball does not look upon fondly. So it was kind of funny today when Sammy Sosa released a statement, and this is from the Athletic article, which is by Patrick Mooney about 4 hours ago. Sammy Sosa released a statement in the middle of the afternoon, and it read as follows. It said, "I left it all on the field for the Cubs and Cubs fans because I wanted to win and make the fans happy." Okay, thanks, Sammy. "I love to see the fans at Wrigley in the right field bleachers every home game. I understand why some players in my era don't always get the recognition that our stats deserve. There were times I did whatever I could to recover from injuries in an effort to keep my strength up to perform over 162 games. I never broke any laws, but in hindsight, I made mistakes, and I apologize." That's going to be a key. This is just my editorial now. That's going to be a key sentence of the crux of why we're talking about this. "We accomplished great things as a team, and I worked extremely hard in the batting cage to become a great hitter. Cubs fans are the best in the world. I hope that the fans, the Cubs, and I can all come together again and move forward. We can't change the past, but the future is bright. In my heart, I have always been a Cub, and I can't wait to see Cubs fans again." And that's the end of his statement. The Cubs ended up responding to this statement with, quote, "We appreciate Sammy releasing his statement and reaching out." This is from, who is it from? Cubs chairman Tom Ricketts. So there was a statement on his behalf that said, quote, "We appreciate Sammy releasing a statement and for reaching out. No one plays harder or wanted to win more. Nobody's perfect, but we never doubted his passion for the game and the Cubs. It's an understatement to say that Sammy is a fan favorite. We plan on inviting him to the 2025 Cubs convention, and while it's short notice, we hope that he can attend. We are all ready to move forward together." So perfect for the Christmas season, because Christmas and the holidays and everything is about coming together with your family. And what better than a week before Christmas and the holiday to say, you know what, let's bygones be bygones. After 21 years, after not playing for 20 years, let's just put everything to bed. Sammy last played for the Cubs in 2004. I think he retired in 2007 with Texas. Random? Anybody? It's a little bit odd that this is all coming out. I'm not quite sure why he had to release a statement, why they had to respond. It seems a little bit overdue. The ironic part about this, and I think Buster Olney, I'm going to try to get his tweet up here. The ironic thing here is that Sammy Sosa did a lot to elevate the Cubs, right? Regardless of what you say about the steroid use and all that stuff. Him in that chase with Mark McGwire in 1998 didn't elevate the Cubs brand endlessly during that season, but it also elevated baseball, right? I mean, I wasn't old enough to remember, but I know a lot of people have said 1984 when the strike happened, when the labor stopped baseball from continuing, and there was no World Series that year, there were a lot of people that didn't want to come back to the game, right? And that chase, that injected excitement from the home run chase, got a lot of people back into the game. Right? That's what you have to thank Sammy Sosa for. If you haven't watched the documentary, The 30 for 30 Long Gone Summer, go watch it. It's on ESPN Plus. You can go pay the whatever $2.99 it is to get ESPN and go watch that documentary, because not only does it endear you to kind of Sammy Sosa, right? Because of them comparing the two against Mark McGwire and his kind of stoic personality. But you kind of realize that really did elevate and kind of make the game start moving again, right? That's what you have to thank Sammy Sosa for. Sammy Sosa also injected a lot of personality into the game, right? There were a lot of crazy batting stances, but all of the skips coming out of the home run trot, the bat being so far back and his shoulder slammed into his chin, looking at the game, him running out to the outfield every single time. After 9/11, him kind of running out with an American flag, which it was still an iconic kind of image from that time. That's thanks to Sammy Sosa. Also, some of the mistakes that Sammy made on the field. Corked bat, that's Sammy Sosa, right? He injected a personality into the game that not a lot of players did, right? If you think about those 90s swell of players, right? You have Jose Canseco, who felt like a cartoon, right? Mark McGwire felt like the other side of the Bash Brothers, right? It felt like you were watching like a sitcom while you were watching baseball. Barry Bonds, getting bigger by the moment, right? These were the personalities that kind of took over baseball. How many times in baseball do you have 3-4 shortstops all volleying to be the best shortstop ever, with Nomar Garciaparra, Alex Rodriguez, Miguel Tejada, right? Derek Jeter, all of them together. Omar Vizquel, right? These are larger than life personalities, right? That's what you have to thank Sammy Sosa for. So the idea that they're kind of demanding him to apologize for taking steroids, or for allegedly taking steroids, to be welcomed back in the game, is a blackballing that baseball has to stop doing. They did it with Pete Rose until the day he died, right? They gradually let him back in because he bet on baseball. What are you trying to prove? Like, at that point, what was the point? Now that he apologized, now he's let back in and he can come to Cubs conventions and stuff like that. It just seems so petty, doesn't it? Buster Olney, here's the tweet from Buster Olney. Let me see if I can fade to it. Buster Olney says on Twitter, organizations that insist upon apologies from the steroid players in return for entrance into team events should be required to issue their own apologies for looking the other way while cashing checks. The sanctimony is ridiculous. He's absolutely right. They profited. They benefited. Those fans were excited when he came up to bat. Yes, it was technically frowned upon, but Sammy's right. In that statement, he says, hey, I didn't break any laws. There weren't laws at the time. There wasn't guidelines at the time about what they were taking. It was only after the fact that it became a kind of a big deal, right? And people debate all the time about like all that kind of stuff. But like, there wasn't a suspension policy for getting caught with steroids. There wasn't even drug testing back then. So it was just frowned upon. Maybe it's in the rule book, but it's like the spitball. Like, they weren't suspending players, even though people were doubling in size from season to season. So anyways, the point of this kind of segment is just to kind of talk about that little line. There were times where I did whatever I could to recover from injuries in an effort to keep my strength up to perform over 162 games. I never broke any laws, but in hindsight, I made mistakes, and I apologize. Sammy, I don't think you have to apologize for anything. You were one of the more fun players to watch in baseball at the time. The home run trot, the pointing to the sky after every home run, 3 seasons of over 60 dingers. You made baseball entertaining when it didn't have any right to be. So, frankly, I don't accept your apology. You gave me a lot of joy while watching the game back when I was a kid. So, frankly, I kind of agree with Buster Olney. I think this apology is absolutely unnecessary. So, but yeah, what a weird story to kind of come out of nowhere. And again, it's like baseball just acknowledging that they continue to punish this era of players, and they just don't recognize this part of the game, right? This era of the game. It was 20 years ago, right? Like, think about all the things. I mean, I'm not endorsing that. I don't frankly care. I mean, if players, I believe in the integrity of the game. I think the integrity of the game should stay the same. I don't think that taking steroids is necessarily fair, but like, if we're talking about sports here, we're not talking about life or death, right? It was fun to see people hit those balls like 1,000 feet. So, and think about all the things that basically came of it, right? I mean, they had to testify in front of Congress. Baseball players testifying, Rafael Palmeiro testifying in front of Congress about whether they took steroids or not. Mark McGwire. I mean, there are so many other pressing issues, but the fact that this steroid era led to that, I mean, they should be apologizing to him, to be perfectly honest. So, anyways, what a bizarre story to come out of the blue. Sammy Sosa apologizing to the Cubs, and now he'll finally be invited to the Cubs holiday party. So, but anyways, it's the holiday season. I'm glad the Cubs and Sammy made up. It was high time, and frankly, those Cubs Thanksgivings were getting awkward because Sammy didn't apologize. So I'm glad that we finally cleared the air between the Chicago Cubs and Sammy's, or we finally cleared the air with the feud between Sammy and the Cubs. If you ever want to it's like Barry Bonds, like looking at these stats. If you ever look at some of these seasons, it's just remarkable. I mean, Sammy won the MVP in 1998. He hit 66 home runs. Remarkable that McGwire didn't with 70, but 158 RBIs in 159 games. He had 2 seasons in 1997 and 1999 when he played every single game. I mean, every single game. How many players even do that nowadays with days off? Sammy ended up with 13 years with the Cubs, 3 with the White Sox, 1 with Baltimore towards the very, very end, and 2 with Texas. So what a career for Sammy, and all for it to come down to 18 years in the bigs, and 20 years later, and 1 apology should be added to Baseball Reference. So with that, let's take a quick break, and then we'll wrap up the show for the year. What an exciting thing to say. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Again, that's Powell Not Found podcast on YouTube and Apple TV, and Apple Podcast. I'm putting the cart before the horse there. And Spotify. Go check out the show. Go review the show. I wanted to, before we finished up and wrapped up for the year, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the year. We started doing this on January 1st of 2024. And it was kind of a challenge to myself to see if I could kind of keep this thing going for the year on a weekly basis. And what we ended up with, good shows, we ended up with some bad shows, but what we ended up with was 48 numbered episodes, which is pretty good. I think we took a week off for my birthday. We took, we're going to take next week off, and maybe we took 2 weeks off for my birthday. I can't remember, or maybe it was episode 0 that was throwing us off. But we ended up doing 48 numbered episodes, 50 episodes in total if you add the bonus episode and episode 0. We ended up releasing what will be 52 shorts for the year. And we ended up posting on social media, on TikTok and on Instagram, on YouTube. We had a little bit of activity on Twitter and on Facebook. And it was a lot of editing and a lot of talking. We ended up talking, I think it was like 33 hours of content or something like that. I can't remember exactly the number. We posted the podcast every single week, and we experienced a lot. I think, personally, I feel a little bit different in terms of delivering the show, and I learned a lot of things about the production of the show, right? And about how you have to kind of be a little bit prepared, how week to week it is hard to think about the things that you care about and what you want to talk about, even if you're you're the decision maker, right? This started as a podcast of the things I wanted to talk about, mostly because a lot of people didn't want to hear me talk about the Yankees at work or at home. So I decided to kind of make a vehicle of it just to speak about what I thought about the Yankees. When the Yankee season began, it was relatively easy, right? There was always something to talk about. There was always some games to talk about. And we added, reviews of movies and reviews of TV shows. And that kind of helped complement the show and make it a little bit more relatable to somebody who wasn't a Yankees fan, which was important to me because, at some point, even during the season, in the doldrums of the season, baseball gets boring, right? I used to play it. I know it, right? So we experienced a lot of success on YouTube, what I deem success, not what's successful on YouTube, but what I deem success. And we ended up getting a lot of interactions with shorts in particular. And that was a really cool experience for me to experience for the first time, right? Positive feedback, also negative feedback, and dealing with it. And I thought that was really cool. And I hope to kind of continue it into the new year. The reviews of movies and television shows, I think, is an evolving process, right? I think the one thing about doing this podcast and the one thing about expressing your opinion is that it's hard, right? It's hard work to express your opinion with clarity and with and to articulate it in a way that people can understand it. And hopefully over the 50 episodes that we've started, hopefully it's gotten better. There were times also with the podcast that it is tough to do something on a weekly basis. So those podcasts that have 400, 500 episodes and the same people are doing it all the time, my God, they're stalwarts for that kind of consistency because it's hard. It's hard to do a podcast and then edit it and stuff like that. So all in all, what I want to say is that it has been a learning experience so far. I'm very, very thankful to anybody who's tuned in from the very, very beginning and kept listening. I'm very thankful for the people that will continue to listen. And I'm very thankful for everybody who's supported this kind of endeavor. It's been a lot of weekends of kind of working around the podcast and finding time to record and finding time to do this so that I can accomplish this goal. So with this episode, I can finally say my 2024 resolution is complete. And that's kind of a cool thing to say. I feel like a lot of times my resolution of losing weight continues to be an annual one that's never complete. Apparently you have to work on it until the day you die. So it's nice to kind of say that the keeping this podcast kind of active and going was complete. So anybody who was there from the very beginning giving any kind of support, I just want to say thank you. It's been a great year for me. I feel creatively like I stumbled upon into a vehicle that I probably should have started years ago because I still enjoy it. And I hope that you guys listening also enjoy it. I encourage anybody too who listens to the podcast, comment on the social media channels, right? Comment on YouTube, comment on TikTok, comment on what is the other one? Instagram, right? And rate and review the show, and hopefully we'll have more interaction that will drive engagement and stuff like that, and make the show bigger and better. With that said, I want to tell everybody have a great holiday, have a safe holiday, and we'll be back next year. I think it's January 3rd, January 4th, or something like that. Whatever the first Saturday is, to talk about more things that I want to talk about, right? And hopefully everyone has a great new year. Thank you for listening again. And with that, we'll go ahead and play out the theme song, which is A Girl Who Loves Gin, which was written by me, which is been playing at the beginning of every single one of these podcasts from the very beginning. So I'll let you hear the whole song, and then we'll end it that way. So thank you. I'll see you in 2025. Thank you for supporting the show. And again, this is Mark Powell with the Powell Not Found podcast saying, I'll see you next year. Bye-bye.
I'm gonna tell you a story about a girl who loves gin. A national pandemic seized her birthday celebration. Although she knew it was coming, we tried not to tell her. She brewed some Irish breakfast tea. She knew her birthday was getting corona. It was like those Hallmark movies that she liked to watch. Once a passive viewer, now she's part of the plot. But there's no contagion or disease that'll stop us from singing today. One too many lonely days till we can see you again. She tries to shake it off. She's losing track of the days. So she's been dancing to the music blaring from the Renegade. And in the morning she lays with her memories departed of heavy college weeks, bookended with long trips to Busch Gardens. It was like those hockey games with no time on the clock. By the time she turned her head, the Caps had won the cup. But there's no contagion or disease that'll stop us from singing today. One too many lonely days till we can see you again. It's those things that caused her pain, they worked out in the end. Except the time she pulled the groceries back in a snowstorm on a sled. But there's no contagion or disease that'll stop us from singing today. One too many lonely days till we can see you again. One too many lonely days till we can see you again. One too many lonely days till we can see you again. I'm gonna tell you a story about a girl who loves gin.